All right, guys, what's happening in this video? I'm sharing a little bit of an update. So much of our lives have changed in the years since the original ChatGPT was released. Emerging technologies impact our lives is nothing short of profound and difficulty adapting in my own life and the lives of those that I've served. And it's no surprise. The speed of change is staggering. It's something we've covered a number of times in our community discussions, and we're not the only ones. In fact, the rate of change is exponential. It, the question that I think a lot of us would be wise to ask is, what do the business models of tomorrow look like? A lot of the time, like I've said, when I've done origin stories with podcasts with clients and friends, it's hard to know where you're going unless you know where you come from. And it's more than just a philosophical statement. It's actually a principle that can be applied across domains. So if we think about what sort of business models are required for the future, it is helpful to contrast that with business models that have come up in the past, necessarily from previous periods. And we think, okay, how about recent history? Because recent history is closest thing we can reach to, like several years back, really worked. And in many cases is still working today, as most of the population is still operating within that older paradigm. And you think, okay, a really produced longer form course, as an example, as a digital product, is something a lot of people would expect in a coaching, consulting type of space, community space. You would imagine you see a big course there. And I don't think that format is going to go away anytime soon. But there is a question, which is, how fast is that? It's actually not very fast at all, because you think, even if it's like this, and I'm just sitting back this afternoon recording this Loom video, it takes a while to do a high production, well-structured, professional grade course. And just like people say, a lot of college is obsolete these days, because by the time you actually get into the workforce, so much of what you're doing is, so much of what you've learned is obsolete. In that same way, we need to develop new paradigms for speed to market and synthesizing information. Disintermediation is a big passion of mine. It's perhaps a bit of a nerdy passion, but I've been interested in that since 2017 or 18, I believe. And it's removing mediating interfaces, removing mediation. So you can imagine, if it takes nodes in a chain to get an outcome from input to output, if you can get that same output in 5 nodes, you're reducing the overall complexity, you're reducing the overall scope. And it's just said in another way, look at it from a real world example of requiring a graphic designer to help you with your social media stuff. Just a couple of years ago, maybe you would have to hire some sort of creative professional, a freelancer, or even an agency to help with producing carousels and videos and static posts and long form articles. And you'd have to pay thousands of dollars a month for that kind of thing. Now you can pay $20 a month for ChatGPT, $20 for Gamma, $20 for HeyGen, and you can go high level or for your scheduling or Social Pilot or Blotato or any of these other things. Call it $100 fully stacked, and you have capabilities that are very competitive against what 3, 4, 5 years ago would have required us narrow field specialists or agencies or freelancers. So that's disintermediation. You get the similar output, or in some cases, I would argue better outputs, just having been through the agency merry-go-round more times than I like to count. I've seen how much money goes in and the kind of quality that oftentimes will come out. Compare that to what we get from AI when it's well-structured. So that's disintermediation. And that's one example. But disintermediating ourselves, that's what gets scary. It's one thing to say, hey, listen, I'm saving $5,000 a month. I don't have to pay a social media marketing agency. I've got to put $100 into AI tools and I'm set. All I got to learn how to is just prompt a little bit. That's cool. But what about when we have to disintermediate ourselves? That's when things get a little squeamish because we put so much work into our business. We put so much work and time and energy and investment into our offers and funnels and nurture sequences and automations and all the stuff that goes along with it. Venture Map is like all about capturing a up-to-date current state of an entire business, building a digital twin of a company and moving it from its current place in time to its target place, to its target state, to scaling the company through its constraints towards its ultimate outcome, which is a sale, a sale with very favorable terms for the owner, or perhaps if there's some sort of other succession plan. But as they say, it's not if you're going to exit your business, it's when and on whose terms. So I digress. Cannibalizing our own business is a strange feel. And it's much, if you've ever seen the Cirque du Soleil Tightwire act, it's like that. You can go wrong pretty easily, pretty quickly. And my hope is that I'll be able to walk that really narrow line in this video, and I'll finish here pretty quickly for you guys. But what I have for you is literally like my internal notes, my internal process. And actually, for many years, I have built my own method of synthesizing information, building a comprehensive understanding, forging my own unique and authentic perspective that's contextualized within a logic framework that I am integrated into an array of principles, a suite of principles that I use to navigate life and business, to traverse the terrain of entrepreneurship. And sharing like raw materials, draft materials is one of those weird things because I want to respect your time. And my hope is that my track record has displayed that I want to compress and productize and optimize. So when I am coming to any of the members of the audience, the community, our client and member base, that it's high leverage. And time is the only non-renewable commodity. I'm the single largest advocate and champion for that ideal. But if we're starting to place these points on the map to build out an intersection of sorts that says, if we want to skate to where this puck is going, we can't just rely on this large scale training program. As an example, Venture Map Operator. The Venture Map Operator training program is going to be a massive undertaking. It is a massive undertaking. And it will, I believe, become a certification program. It'll become for which technically competent, highly engaged members of our community will be enabled to grow their business through our framework and methodology. And we will essentially deliver our business model to them to run in their own practice with creative freedom and autonomy and support from us, and where it matters in terms of like revenue generation and service delivery. I digress. Something like this, though, this is a nuanced type of a thing. So recently for YouTube, just a build in public video, I shared some of what I've been working on with this systems array project. And I'm trying to get into the habit of showing that the trainer does his own workouts, the chef eats his own cooking. When I talk so much about time box, monotask, get it done, I want to just always show I'm doing that too. I actually believe in it. And it is not easy. It's not always fun. In fact, it really is. As you guys probably know, Alex Ramosi launched a new book recently. I've talked about it before. This guy right here, awesome, extremely challenging book because it brings some ideas to life that make you rethink a lot of what you're doing in business. At least that's true for me. I stayed up late into that night advocating and persuading my beloved wife as to the reasons why we should invest in the package. So of course, now I have these incredible playbooks and the ACQ AI and some other really valuable, insightful resources that have just compressed what I think would have taken years of learning down to weeks. So that's like a neck breaking speed. But I want to share a bit of the insight that I've gotten from this in just a few words. And then I want to disintermediate myself a little bit. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's going to take us as far as we need to go. The big idea, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, this is straight out of Hormozi's implementation workshop. And if you guys want to watch that, it's an unlisted video on YouTube. Just let me know. I'm happy to share it with you. And Hormozi talks about this constraint and like framework where there's only one main constraint affecting the scale of the business at any point in time and blocking the flow of potential, which is just a fascinating concept the more I think about it. And the big idea is you want to apply leverage to that constraint and the form of a best practice, proven best practice, a playbook essentially. Just like in a log jam, a way that you go about freeing the log jam isn't actually randomly from the side. You try to find the exact logs that are causing basically the holdup and apply leverage to that. And once you break those key logs, the rest of the flow will basically break through. And that's the big idea. Really fascinating. So Hormozi talks about like the primary constraints, because that was tough. It was a 4-hour, really in-depth training. And they've got a dozen different playbooks, plus the new book, plus the AI. So I've been just like drinking from the fire hose on this, trying to understand a range of things as well as implement them. And these are basically the primary constraints that he talks about. I don't know about you, but when I see a long, just like breakdown of text, it is difficult to really make a lot of sense of it, especially in a short period of time. So for me, being a visual thinker, I started just working to contextualize it spatially and say, okay, here's basically how those constraints would look if you put them into the experience lane. That's not a perfect representation. It's not to perfect scale, right? Because we're literally talking about each of these phases. And then, of course, if you consider the offers that he's talking about in the new book for the money models, that goes in a completely different way. So the complexity is pretty high here. But this is the rough draft. And I'm not going to get into this today because I'm already 15 minutes. But if you guys are wondering why I have been so adamant about zeroing in on the strategy execution system, it's because truly, whatever the constraint is, whatever the solution needs to be applied to that constraint is going to happen within the realm of strategy execution. So if we are bad at this, we're never going to be successful. So that's this piece that's really convinced in now more than ever. And one of the videos, you guys will probably see it on YouTube one of these days, or not. But I basically show how I produced a ton of this data because I have Joey Coleman's phases essentially with Don Miller's and Russell Brunson. That's what makes up the 10 phases of the experience lane. That's how we built that standard model. 4 on acquisition, 6 on fulfillment. And then we put the SaaS sales method, which is a fantastic book for evidence-based sales. Their metrics, their data and KPIs are just really solid, world-class, the way that they have something called the bow tie model, which is just fantastic. So that was, through great efforts, was contextualized within the phases. But what Hormozi is doing is at a completely other level. It is taking it so much further. So I've generated a lot of data, and I'm just working on like firing those neurons, getting a chance to understand it. And again, I don't know about you, but whether I'm reading it here or goes so far into my brain before I start to lose focus, like squirrel, can't really keep track for that long. So what I personally do is a couple of things. They just keep Rubik's cubing it essentially. And I will turn it into gammers, which is like a very obvious thing, and just cut through that. But I'll also do a few other things. For example, I'll run it through NotebookLM and get an audio, get a video, get overviews, get all sorts of stuff. And what I've done is basically just shared all of that with you guys. And it is like an insane amount of information and detail that I don't ever expect you to go through. But in time, when it's ready, it will be fully synthesized and I'll be able to deliver a really crisp 4 or 5 minute video, and it'll be a tool and it'll be just magic. I thought it might be meaningful to share this sort of raw insight and the process that I'm going through and not insulate everyone from that, because it might be valuable and you would actually perhaps derive some of your own insights. So all of the gammers are in here. You could come through and access any of that for yourself. If you have questions on it, you want me to deeper dives, I'm happy to do that. But this entire thing is available. It's inside the vault. Just go to Classroom, hit Vault, and then down here, I added deep research. So you can just click that. And this is the first one. I've got a whole other thing on lead gen. I've been doing some pretty serious, just deep analysis on each of the primary systems in the business: lead gen, lead nurture, sales conversion, onboarding, customer success, and referral. And some of the interdisciplinary stuff that we use, like service blueprinting, business architecture, process management, all that stuff. And I think I'm going to just do that same thing, which is provided here as just as a literally the vault, but so not standing in a mediating position alone, that those who are looking for that direct access can have it. Okay, so that's 20 minutes. Hopefully you guys watch this on 2.0. If you are just interested in next steps, I would say, hey, check this out. This is from NotebookLM. It's pretty legit. It cuts through the big ideas in 4 minutes or so if you watch it on 2X. And then there's a conversation after that. But if you want, you're welcome to check into any of this and let me know what you think. All right. Appreciate you guys. You're awesome. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Logan out.